Well, it's good to have our friend Kash Patel with us, who worked with Devin Nunes, was Chief of Staff to the Secretary of Defense. Kash Patel, it looks like the Admiral, they like to call him Admiral Kirby, is blaming Donald Trump for Afghanistan. Don't you get sick and tired of these guys taking responsibility for nothing? And not only that, he didn't see any chaos at the end there.
No, you're absolutely right, Mark. Great to be with you. Look, as Chief of Staff at the Department of Defense, by regulation, I was charged by Donald Trump to lead the presidential transition from Trump to Biden. And we did the largest presidential transition in U.S. DOD history. So when a guy like Kirby comes out and says he didn't see the chaos, did he miss the Afghans plunging to their deaths on our C-130s? Or the 7 children that Biden drone struck and killed in response to the 13 American soldiers that were allowed to be blown up because Biden left the terrorists out of Bagram detention facilities? These are hard facts, and the fact that they are lying and disgracing our uniformed service members, especially the fallen, shows you the leaps they are willing to take with the mainstream media just to cover a political narrative. We put the mission first because that's what President Trump told us to do, and we transitioned, and Milley and Austin and company refused to meet with us in person about the transition, but we sent it to him anyway. The materials are there for the world to read.
Really? I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
so Milley and Austin wouldn't meet with, and of course Milley, up until the end, was still subordinate to the Secretary of Defense. They wouldn't meet with your transition folks?
Milley did his own transition because what he cared about was keeping his own job. He could call me at 3 a.m. worried that Donald Trump would fire him. I said, sir, if you're the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, you do your job advising the president. You have nothing to be worried about. But if you enter the political fray like you've done, then you should be worried. And the Secretary of Defense, the incoming Austin, refused to receive Chris Miller, our SecDef's phone calls. My Chief of Staff counterpart, incoming, called her from overseas, said I'm at your disposal 24/7. Those are the instructions from the White House, refused to meet with me. But in the heights of COVID, we still orchestrated the largest transition of documents and meetings with our subordinates because the mission was far too important. The Biden administration felt it appropriate to take time to fire my employees who are on maternity and paternity leave. That was their focus, not the withdrawal.
But this is amazing. It's the first I've heard this. The whole idea of a transition is so you can peacefully and competently transition from one administration to the other. They've attacked you guys for interrupting that process on January 6th, and here we have the Biden administration doesn't want to hear from the existing administration. And this guy, Milley, I mean, if we take the White House back, that guy's got to go, and the sooner the better. No?
Oh, he's out. His term expires this fall, so we won't have to worry about him coming back. But we will have to fix the damage that he's done.
He's just not a military man to me. I mean, maybe he spent his whole life in the military. Maybe he was very brave and heroic and all that. He's definitely in the wrong position, that guy. He is a weasel. That's what he is. He's a weasel,
He's a political monster. He's the Kraken of the swamp and makes Nancy Pelosi look like Mickey Mouse when it comes to politics. This guy cared about his job and keeping it.
Excuse me, Minnie Mouse.
Milley used to know how to act because I was there when we took out al-Baghdadi, and Milley on that evening acted appropriately with the president. So I knew he knew how to do his job, and I knew he turned political. Just like the January 6th narrative, we led that effort, and the Biden administration's DOD Inspector General said we acted swiftly and appropriately. People should look at the Biden DOD's Afghan withdrawal report and see what they say about our actions.
You're not free to talk, or you don't feel you're free to talk about that grand jury that you were dragged in front of, are you?
Yeah, well, I want to talk about it endlessly, and I want to talk about the law and what classified information is, but I got to hold powder for just now.
Yeah, I understand. Well, when you're ready, let me know, okay? Because
absolutely,
this whole operation. Now, so that's Afghanistan. Now we have this preposterous indictment of Donald Trump, and everybody knows it's preposterous. But I keep my eye on Atlanta and Washington, too, because a lot of these legal analysts, as I call them, they will turn on a dime and all of a sudden, wow, this is serious now, this one. And I said that the Manhattan one wasn't, but the Atlanta one's very, very serious. Don't you smell that coming?
Yeah, the former federal prosecutor and public defender, one of the rare people to have done both sides of the aisle. I see the political
not in the same
coming,
case,
but the brilliance of Donald. Not in the same case, but they're going to try to be the ones that get Trump and weaponize justice. But we've been talking about a two-tier system of justice for years now. It's not a right-wing conspiracy narrative. And Donald Trump has brilliantly taken Alvin Bragg and put him on defense and created the reality for many Americans who are blinded by their lies to say, you could be next, because they care about political prosecutions, not those based in law. So I'm the guy that may be in the minority. I don't want the motion to dismiss tomorrow or next week. I want it a year or two away from the Trump team because I want the discovery. I want the evidence to come out, just like it did in Russiagate, and put it out for America to read about their fraudulent actions, their misrepresentations in court, and their political motivation. And let America be the judge of the two-tier system of justice.
Don't you think that there was ever an example of a case to disbar a prosecutor? This is it.
Well, this and half the ones Merrick Garland's brought and right. Everything else. But you know how the disbarment goes in the state of New York. You remember Kevin Kleinsmith? He lied to, as an FBI attorney, lied to a FISA court just to get a surveillance warrant. The D.C. bar didn't disbar him, suspended him, and just reinstated him. So there's no consequences for these folks, but there should be from Congress because Alvin Bragg utilized federal funds to bring this prosecution. So I ask our committee chairs, where are the subpoenas to produce the documentation and witnesses to show the fraudulent acts for Alvin Bragg to interfere in the 2020
Well, it actually looks like they're working on him. You know, as you well know, they got to get all their ducks lined up so some liberal judge in Washington, D.C. doesn't just burp it out. And speaking of that, so here we have an Obama appointee who's the chief district judge handling all the motions filings on the grand jury, all of them. Donald Trump loses every single one. Then she blows out his attorney-client privilege at the end. Then we have a panel on the D.C. Circuit. People need to understand they did to the D.C. Circuit what they want to do to the Supreme Court. They packed it. Unfortunately, one of the judges was appointed by Donald Trump. I absolutely believe he didn't know who that guy was. It was probably recommended to him from somebody from the Federalist Society. And, and he has no attorney-client privilege. What the hell is that?
Well, as a former attorney and as someone who's appeared before that judge, you've seen the depths of the weaponization of the judicial branch, which was supposed to be the last measure to check the executive and the legislative branch. But I want my grand jury transcripts from those proceedings out because I want to show the world how weaponized and politicized these justices and chief judges are. And we have to keep moving through the appellate court system and take that to the U.S. Supreme Court in order to get what we need. And Congress also has oversight over these justices, and they have the impeachment power. So if such a blatant disregard for the law was executed, why hasn't the House of Representatives instituted impeachment proceedings against these federal judges?
Well, I can think of a couple reasons, because it's not going to go anywhere. The Republicans in the Senate are such a disaster. Oh, I have a question for you. We haven't heard much about Mitch McConnell. I really think he really, really must have hurt himself, don't you? We don't hear anything about him. We don't hear anything about his health.
He hasn't mentioned anything about the Bragg prosecution. I mean, I hope the man is well, but he has decidedly made his position abundantly clear. He is not for the America First agenda.
No, he's not, but I don't think he's even in a position to take a position right now because we don't hear about him. He's not even showing up for work.
Well, that's the problem with having no term limits, and that's why I think Donald Trump
these old guys
to announce that we need term limits for senators and members of the House of Representatives. 2 terms apiece or 3 terms apiece in the House, and that's it. That was the intent of our founding fathers.
So who's running the Senate then? I mean, you'll say Schumer, but Fetterman just came back. Dianne Feinstein's walking into the walls. I'm quite. You got this guy Blunt. Did you see what he's doing now? This guy Blunt from Missouri is leaving his Senate seat to become a Washington hack, a well-paid Washington lobbyist of sorts.
Of course.
I mean, do they have enough members there now?
Well, that's actually a great point. That's the point. When the Feinsteins of the world drop out, it makes them harder to reach the threshold necessary to pass legislation. So this is where Republicans should be maneuvering to take advantage and pass legislation and watch Joe Biden veto it so we can at least have a declared position from the White House. But there's no maneuvering over there in the Senate that I can see.
No, it sounds like they have respect for the Democrats, so they're not going to take steps that they should. Kash Patel, I want to thank you, my friend. Have a wonderful, if you celebrate it, wonderful Easter. Take care of yourself.
You too.
God bless.